you know, it sounds really good. When you have the House, the Senate, the White House, all of them being pro-2A, and we talk about all the things that could be done, and yet the same people that we put there are the ones that are now blocking pro-gun bills and essentially signing on to gun control in and of themselves. What makes this interesting and kind of scary is that they are wolves in sheep's clothing. Because they come to us, they encourage gun owners to get out and vote, which is very important, of course.
And in the state legislature, I supported Second Amendment rights. I also believe in background checks.
But then they just straight up lie to all of us. And so today, we're going to name some of these people in hopes that if they're representatives of your state, call them. Urge them, hey, you guys are not doing what we voted on, and I'll tell you in 2-4 years, whatever, yeah, I'm gonna go a different route because you're not upholding your part of the deal. And there's so many reasons they do this that I don't think a lot of people talk about. I actually do. I want to talk about it in this video. Why they run on the 2A and why they refuse to take on any kind of so-called controversial pro-2A bills. So we're going to see who's doing it. We're going to talk about why they're doing it and the implications that this can have going forward. Of course, I want to hear your opinion too. Let me know what you think down below. Let's go ahead and jump right in. Now, the House and Ways Committee is one of the most important and one of the longest running, actually the longest running committee in Congress. They essentially deal with revenue, taxation, and tariffs. And they can simply stop bills. Right? So let's say you have a majority of people in the House, right? Pro-2A, Republican House. Well, if the House and Ways Committee doesn't take up a bill, they don't prioritize it, that bill simply just stays there. It effectively dies. So you could have votes on the other side, people that are supposed to be on the same side, and they can end it before it ever even gets to a vote. And that's what's happening right now. The chairman of the House and Ways Committee is Jason Smith. And we've seen him run on the Second Amendment and said he will never stop fighting for your rights and the Second Amendment.
Left is pushing to ban one of the most popular firearms in America. I'll never stop fighting for Missourians and our conservative values.
Well, there's just a little problem. Now, Jason Smith isn't the only one, but he is the chairman. Actually, there's a list of Republicans here that aren't necessarily pushing for the hearing protection nor the Short Act. Now, after some pushback, right, Jason Smith said, okay, well, this deals with taxes, so anything NFA related, it has to go through House and Ways Committee. They're the ones that are going to be looking at this, and they're the ones that can essentially lead to deregulation. So if you're thinking Trump isn't taking action, right, when it comes to the Second Amendment, or you don't think he's taking enough action, just consider this. When Jason Smith started getting flack about, hey, why aren't you taking up the HPA and the Short Act? Well, now they went back to the drawing board and they said, okay, we're going to take this $200 fee and we're going to reduce it to zero. Now, that part of it is good, right? You're removing one barrier. The biggest barrier, though, is the waiting period. The amount of information you have to give to the federal government in order to possess or own one of these items. The regulations on them once you own these items. The regulations if you ever decide to get rid of these items. There is just so much red tape that most people don't willingly sign up on a registry. Well, in order to own these, you gotta be on one. And make no mistake about it, not pushing pro-gun bills is basically signing off on gun control. Their points, what they're saying right now is that the status quo is good enough. What they're saying right now is there should be restrictions on your Second Amendment rights. So if you look at any of these names, from New York to West Virginia, Arizona, Florida, so on and so forth, these names of Republicans that are not prioritizing this, I can almost guarantee you that they've run on pro-2A agendas, and yet there's no action. Now you may say, why do they do this, right? This seems to be a huge win for some of them. These Ways and Means committees are the same people that we vote in, right? So we vote in our representatives, and then internally Congress decides and approves who is on these committees. There's no term limits, but if a House member, of course, loses their seat, then that would go to somebody else. But they play a very important role in all of this, and the reasons they will not push for stuff like this is very simple. First of all, timing. If they are getting, or if they're in an election year especially, they almost always refuse. I say they, it's a portion of them, it's not all of them. essentially, they don't prioritize 2A rights. They go with kind of safer options because the last thing they want is media backlash. Let's say there is unfortunate event involves suppressors in any way. Well, now they're going to be the ones to blame because the media is going to hone in on it. And of course, their opponents in that election year are going to hone on it as well. Well, so-and-so House member sold your safety out in the name of the gun lobby. That's how they'll frame it. And if it's in an election year, it's even worse. They're not going to push on these hot button topics. They would rather just kind of make safer moves. They would rather say, I'm going to defend and protect the Second Amendment without actually protecting and defending the Second Amendment. It's much easier to just say that, right? Anybody can say that, but their actions speak way louder than their words. And this is kind of proof of that. And you know as well as I do, there are rhinos sprinkled throughout Congress, and unfortunately, they're the soft ones. They will not push for deregulation like this because they still believe some way, somehow, that guns are kind of the problem. And some of them believe even more that, yeah, there is common sense gun control measures. Some of them don't believe in your right to own an AR, to have a suppressor, a short barrel rifle, a pistol with a brace. These things are for gangsters, not law-abiding citizens. And yet somehow they flip it around and say, this is what my constituents want. Because it doesn't get a lot of attention, right? If they were to pass it, it might get a lot of attention, especially if there's some kind of tragic event. They still use 2017, the Las Vegas shooting. They still use that as a reason to push for gun control. As a matter of fact, 17 to 20, the Hearing Protection Act and all that was blocked because of what happened in Las Vegas, even though suppressors weren't even used. And of course you get Democrats in there, Nancy Pelosi types and all that, they're not even going to consider it. And the other part of this too is, some of these Republicans, they already got credit for the Hearing Protection Act, for the Shush Act, for the Short Act, because they supported it at some point, right? Or they kind of wrote off, yeah, I support this. And then when it comes down to actually getting this thing passed, they say, a little too touchy for me. Now, it is easier for them to remove the tax part of it because, again, they can run on that. They can say, hey, we removed taxes for suppressors, and yet the red tape part of it, the asking for permission and having to give them your fingerprints, photo, your ID, maybe even a firstborn child, all that stays in place, but we got rid of that $200 tax credit. Again, they remove one barrier, keeping the other in place. It's easier for them to go with the $200 tax stamp part. I say tax credit, but the tax stamp part of it, it's way easier for them to actually sign off on that. But some of these Republicans didn't even want that. And this is where we are. So what can we do about it? We can absolutely call them, right? That's why I'm listing these people out. Not to harass them or do anything like that, but let them know, like, hey, I voted you in here to deregulate, right? This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity that we have to finally end the gun restrictions once and for all. To give the power and inalienable rights, God-given rights, back to people. Because they are God-given rights, and yet the government slowly, over time, has played God in a way and said, you know what, we can restrict these rights, even though they should have never, ever been given power to do such a thing. There you go. There's my opinion. I'd love to hear yours. Let me know what you think down below. If you like what I do, consider subscribing. See you in the next one. And as always, hold them down.